In the dark underbelly of 1960s London, where violence, fear and power were the currency of choice, two names sent chills down the spine of every citizen: Ronnie and Reggie Kray. The Kray twins were not just criminals, they were living legends in a city plagued by corruption, extortion and murder. Their rise to infamy was fueled by brutality, and they ruled with an iron fist, leaving a bloody trail of terror in their wake. But what made the Kray twins even more terrifying wasn't just their crimes, it was their ability to evade justice, to control the streets, and to bring fear to even the most hardened criminals. Who were these men? And how did they become Britain's most notorious gangsters? This is the chilling story of the Kray twins and their bloody reign over London. The year was 1950 and London was still recovering from the devastation of World War II. But in the shadows of the city's rebuilding, there thrived a dark world of gangs, rackets, and bloodshed. The East End of London, rough, gritty and constantly on edge, was their stomping ground. The Kray twins, born into poverty and crime, quickly rose to prominence in their unforgiving world. Ronnie and Reggie Kray were no strangers to violence. From a young age, they had been involved in street fighting, petty theft, and intimidation. But it wasn't long before they started to make a name for themselves. First in the small-time rackets of the East End, and eventually in the big leagues of organized crime. Their first major act of violence occurred in the mid-1950s, when they were implicated in the brutal assault of rival gang members. The Kray's ability to fight and win earned them the respect and fear of others. By the early 1960s, they had taken control of several lucrative criminal enterprises, including nightclubs, extortion rackets, and protection schemes. But it wasn't just their business dealings that made them feared. It was their willingness to use extreme violence to maintain their power. Their victims ranged from rival gang members to innocent civilians who would find themselves caught in a crossfire. One of their most notorious acts was the murder of George Cornell, a member of a rival gang, who was shot in the head in a London pub in 1966. Ronnie Kray, known for his unpredictable nature, was the one who pulled the trigger, cementing the twins' reputation for deathly ruthlessness. As the Kray twins' criminal empire grew, so did the fear they instilled in the community. But even as the brothers climbed to power, their actions began to attract the attention of the police. The problem? The Krays were incredibly smart about their operations. They used bribery, intimidation, and the loyalty of their underlying to keep law enforcement at bay. The twins had connections everywhere, inside the police, the political world, and even the media. Despite several arrests and investigations, the Kray twins managed to evade the laws for years. Each time the police thought they had them cornered, the Krays would slip away, leaving behind only bodies and broken lives. The fear was unimaginable as the residents of East London began to wonder if anyone could bring these men to justice. What made the Krays so hard to catch wasn't just their power, it was their ability to control the people around them. They were known to terrorize anyone who dared to cross them. Witnesses were too afraid to speak out, and anyone who tried to testify against them mysteriously disappeared or suffered violent retribution. The police, despite their best efforts, found themselves locked in a game of cat and mouse with the Kray twins, their progress continually stifled by fear and corruption. The reign of terror that Kray twins unleashed on London seemed like it would never end. But in 1968, after years of evading justice, the brothers' luck finally ran out. An undercover operation combined with the testimony of former associates and a growing network of informants finally gave police the evidence they needed to arrest the Krays. Ronnie and Reggie were charged with a series of crimes, including the murder of George Cornell and the brutal assault of their other rivals. In 1969, both brothers were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Ronnie Kray was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and was sent to a psychiatric hospital, while Reggie Kray spent his life behind bars. Despite their downfall, the Kray twins left an indelible mark on London's criminal history. Their bloody reign had terrorized the city for nearly a decade, and the fear they instilled would not fade easily. Ronnie Kray died in 1995, and Reggie followed in 2000. But their legacy lives on. The Kray twins were not just criminals, they were symbols of a time when fear ruled the streets and the power of organized crime seemed unstoppable. Their story has become one of legend, told and retold across books, movies, and documentaries. But behind the myth, one thing remains clear. The Kray twins' reign of terror in London was a chilling reminder of the violence and corruption that can grow in the shadows. The Kray twins may have been captured and sentenced, but the story of their bloody reign continues to haunt London to this day. Their empire of violence, their manipulation of the law, and their brutal murders left scars that were never truly healed. The fear they inspired was a mark on a city, a reminder of the dark side of power and the lengths some will go to in order to hold on to it. The Kray twins were not just gangsters, they were living legends of terror, proving that in the world of crime, even the most ruthless and powerful can eventually fall. But the shadow they cast still lingers, and their story is one of caution, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked power, violence, and fear.